Assalamualaikum. I am Ahmed O'Keefe, host of the NYCMC Business Incubator's virtual business program. Of course, you know the NYCMC, a 501c3 nonprofit organization and home of one of the fastest growing Muslim communities in New York City. It is home of the Isa ibn Maryam Masjid, the FCAD Institute, teaching Arabic and Islamic studies, the Wellspring School, a full-time school for children, NYCMC Foster Care, NYCMC Angels, providing COVID relief, the Hatebusters, a national anti-islamophobia program, and the Incubator program. Now, the goal of the Incubator program, this program, is to provide mentorship, expertise, and networking to help new and amplify current entrepreneurs. This virtual business program is aimed to help us sharpen our skills and business knowledge. It is a 10-week program. Tonight is session 2. We're going to have our speaker present for around 40 minutes, and then we'll open it up to Q&A for the last 20 minutes or so. You can use the YouTube chat to ask questions, or you can send a question to Incubator at NYCMuslimCenter.org. Please add that email address, Incubator at NYCMuslimCenter.org, to your contacts to help make sure you get all future emails from us. Keep an eye on your email because we're going to be sending out our full schedule very soon. Tonight we have Danielle LoDuca, co-founder and chief nutrition officer of Superfood Bake Shop. As a certified nutrition and fitness coach, she makes sure Superfood Bake Shop's chewy cookies are crazy delicious and good for the body. Baking gluten-free cookies made with superfood and no more than 2 grams added sugar is her superpower. She's going to address us tonight on telling our story as business owners and entrepreneurs. Sister Danielle.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everybody.
Alaikum salam.
All right, so as Brother Ahmed said, I'm Danielle LoDuca of superfoodbakeshop.com. I'm so excited to be here. I'm really excited about this program, and I just want to express my gratitude and how proud I am of NYCMC, an organization that's been doing a lot of great activities and programs within the community, but this is something really new. I think it really offers a lot of value, inshallah, to people across the country. So thank you so much for having me, and I hope that everybody benefits a lot from this program. So we're going to talk tonight about your story. What's your story? How do you tell your story? Human beings are wired to be intrigued by stories, to tell stories. It's something that we know has occurred for centuries, if not actually millennia. So stories encourage social cooperation. They pass on tradition. They pass on social codes, social norms. They give a sense of belonging. They help people to make sense of the world we live in. And so many more things. We know that storytelling has been important to humanity probably since the inception of humanity. So humans even find stories where there are no stories. There are a lot of studies done about the importance of storytelling throughout human history. One of them, done in the early 1900s, took a few dozen people, and they were all shown a short film that only included inanimate objects, shapes. So 2 triangles, a circle, and a stationary rectangle moving across a flat plane. There was nothing else to this little film. All of the participants except one created these elaborate narratives. They saw emotion. They saw actual stories in the movement of those objects on the screen. So many of them saw the 2 smaller shapes as young. The circle was worried. The large triangle was frustrated and angry. So only one person actually saw it for what it was, which was just shapes moving across a flat plane. So this to me speaks to how important stories are, that we would even seek them out in places they don't necessarily exist. Stories can help us spark connection. So as a business, you want to have a connection with your audience, with your customers, with your clients. And a story is a great way to help to create that spark and that connection with your audience. Stories can help shape people's perspectives, and they can even guide action. So let's move on. How do you tell your story? We're going to go over some key elements and points that, yeah, sure, sure. Okay, let's try it again. Is that working? Can you see it now?
I can see it, but so far I don't know that YouTube does.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, so we're good? Okay. All right, so how do you tell your story? And when do you tell your story? So your story is going to come through maybe your about page. It could come across in publications when people want to know more about what you do. It may, you may make videos that talk about what your business is all about. So there are many ways to utilize your story, and we're going to go over some important elements that you need to include in your story to make it the most effective story you can. Keep going the wrong way. I'm sorry about that. All right. So does your story solve a problem? Typically, in any business, you have a product or service, and you're solving some kind of problem, some type of pain point for your client or customer. In some cases, your product or your service might even be born out of that problem. It might have come because you were solving a problem. Or if you already have a product that you're selling or a service that you're selling and you're not sure what problem it solves, you can kind of reverse engineer it and say, like, okay, I have this thing, what problem is being solved with this object or with this service? So reverse engineering is one way to go about figuring out what the problem that you're solving is. So the next thing that you would need to do is make sure that that is a problem that people actually care about, that they're willing to pay for, that they're seeking it out, and that the group of people who have that problem, isn't too small of a group where it'll be too hard to find people who need the solution that you provide. And that can be done with research. So when you know what problem you're solving, that helps to grab your audience's attention. It tells them that there is a connection between what you offer and what their needs are. So just like we were talking about how stories can help create a sense of belonging, when you tell your story, you want your customer or your client, your audience, to identify with you based on that shared problem, that you are the one who understands that issue, and then you have something to provide that can help alleviate that issue or solve their problem, reduce their frustration, fulfill their need, fulfill their desire. So that has to be communicated through your story. So our Superfood Bake Shop, our product was literally born out of frustration, out of a problem. So we, couldn't find a healthy treat, something that tasted really good, but it was also not damaging to the body, and was enjoyable to eat, felt like dessert. And that's how we ended up creating our product. So for us, it helps to, understand where we came from and why we're creating our product. But like I said, if you have a product it wasn't created in that way, you just reverse engineer it. What problem am I solving? Every product solves some kind of problem. So next we move on from solving problems to emotional connection. So again, with stories, if you stop and think about the stories that you've heard in your life or the ones that were the most memorable, it's often because they touched on some kind of emotion. So you feel a connection from the emotion that story created in you. When we hear stories, we're really, one of the reasons we're drawn to stories is because we like to look for ourselves in the story. We want to find ourselves there. We want to feel that connection with the storyteller. So as a company, when you're telling your story, you need to decide what kind of emotion do you want to evoke in your audience. How do you want to make people feel? And that has to be communicated through your story. So the emotion is going to help them remember you, help them remember the story you told, and help them feel connected with the value that you offer. So that brings me to my next slide. What value do you offer? So we talked about what problem you're solving, but the opposite side of that, or not the opposite side, but the next step of that is really what value are you offering? What benefit are you providing your audience? How are you solving their problem? So I think it's really important to focus on this as opposed to the problem. So you state that you understand the problem, you can align with your audience in that understanding of the original issue, but what's most important is expressing the benefit that you can provide. So instead of focusing on the negative, what's missing, what's frustrating, it's really important to bring out this side of things along with the emotion that you want to evoke from your audience. So for Superfood Bake Shop, we chose happiness because when we created our cookies, we felt happy. We were eating something that tasted amazing. We knew it was beneficial because we made it with whole foods. And then when our kids were excited about it, our neighbors were excited about it, everybody was happy. It was just a lot of happiness going around. And we decided this is the emotion we want to bring out for others. We want them to feel happy that, they've been searching for something delicious that tastes great and is healthy. And they had such a hard time, they couldn't find it. And now they found it. The happiness that comes from that, the happiness that comes from feeling good about what you're doing for your body, seeing your family happy, all of that. So we try to bring out that happiness through all of our communication and definitely through the story by expressing the happiness that we felt and the happiness that, our children and neighbors and customers feel. So we don't want to just mention features when we talk about value. We don't want to just mention features in our story, such as like for us, it's low added sugar. Instead of just saying something like that, like people might not know what the benefit of that is. So you mention the benefits of what you offer. So if something's low sugar, instead of just mentioning that feature, you would say something like, it'll helps you keep the weight off, or it doesn't damage your immune system. It's good for your body. It supports your immune system. So bring out the value and the benefit as opposed to just the features of whatever it is that you're offering. Okay, so next comes resonating with your audience. So to discuss your audience here, making your story resonate with your audience, first, you need to know who you're speaking to. So, usually in the beginning, when you're forming a business, you want to decide who your target audience is. Because, for example, if you're telling a story to a group of people, you want to make sure that you're using language and tone and even imagery that will resonate with that particular group of people. So are you speaking to women? Are you speaking to men? Is your audience younger or older? And this can even vary across different media. So if you're have an article or you're being interviewed in a particular magazine that caters to the youth, then you're going to probably use certain language and imagery that will resonate with that particular audience versus maybe an older audience or an audience that's, you know, purely women. So that's always something to think about who are the audience that you're speaking to, and how can you connect with them? So part of that is also deciding from the beginning, like what you offer. Who are the people that you're likely to connect with? Who are the people that will likely share in the problem, that will be looking for the benefit that you offer? And then how can you communicate with them? Then it has to also resonate with the emotion that you want to evoke. So if you want to evoke happiness, then the way that you communicate your story, you have to resonate with your audience in a way that evokes, you know, that particular emotion. So if you're trying to evoke happiness, you don't want to come across as aggressive. If you're being witty, some audiences might find that offensive, or they might just not get it. Maybe you're using like you know, the newer generation language, and you're speaking to an older generation. And then it might not come across right. So these are all things to consider when you're telling your story. Who is your audience? How can you best resonate with them? And how can you bring out your emotion that you chose to bring out with your brand to that audience? So for us, we think about our audience as people who have been, you know, searching for something healthy. They've been frustrated. They haven't been able to find that healthy treat. And we try to express, you know, our value to them, the value proposition. But if we have to come across as authentic as well. So if we say that we offer a whole food product, but we're using fillers, for example, you know, then that's not authenticity. So you have to also stick with your message and be able to communicate clearly what it is that you're offering, and make sure that the audience you're speaking to is the right one. So like for our product, for example, our audience isn't going to be people who love to regularly indulge in junk food. Maybe they won't be interested in our product. So when we speak to them, the message isn't going to come across. So I hope that here. And then when you express your story, you have to also keep in mind what the stories of your competitors are, and how do you differ from them. So that is where you go through your story and you look at your company and what you offer, and then you choose what to highlight. So you may be the same as some of your competitors on some levels, but there have to be ways where you can differentiate and separate yourself and what you offer from your competitors. And then you can highlight that through your story. And sometimes that has to do with compromise, like what can you compromise and what do you choose not to compromise on? What are the strong points? Do you have a really high quality product? Is your product a better price point? Those are whatever it is where you are ahead of your competitors, or you're different, you can differentiate from your competitors. You want to make sure that comes out in your story as well. And that's what makes your company special. And your story is a great opportunity for you to highlight that. Now, this brings me to your story's promise. So while you tell your story, it's great to bring out what's your company's promise? And you know, we already talked about highlighting what makes your company special. And then here is where you can decide, you choose a promise that is sustainable, that you know that you can keep in the long term. So there might be some things that you think, oh, it'd be great to make this promise to people, but you have to really question yourself and make sure that that promise is sustainable, that you can maintain that for the long term. For us, we chose to focus on the fact that we are going to have no more than 2 grams added sugar in each one of our cookies, and that we are not using any flour or any fillers. So what happens with that is when we're using whole food, we're using high quality food, it's hard to bring the price point down. So if we chose to bring the price point down, then we'd have to add some fillers in there. We'd have to get some flours. And that's where we chose not to compromise. And our promise then to our customers is that we're using high quality whole foods, and there will be no more than 2 grams added sugar per serving. So you decide what your company's promise is, and then you express that promise through the story that you tell. Oops, I went backwards again, I'm sorry. All right, so your story is promise. And then now we're coming to branding. So your branding should also come through in your story, like the things that we've talked about already, your emotion, your brand emotion, your promise, and your value proposition. It's what customers think of you. So this is when you communicate to your customers what they perceive. So after you've had an interaction with your customers, after you've told your story, what is the customer, or what is your audience left with? What is their impression of you and of your offering, of your benefit, of your value? You know, and like we talked about emotions, like, are they happy? Do they feel a little happier after they've interacted with your company? And this isn't something that you can know from one side. So you can't say, well, I did X, Y, and Z, and that expresses happiness, so my customers or my audience must be happy. They must be feeling happy now. But you need to interact with them and get feedback as well from people and see, what are people actually perceiving when they interact with you, when they hear your story? Are they being left with the feeling and the experience that you want to leave them with? So that's something that you can tweak over time, and definitely need to be open to feedback about, and make sure that what you want to express is what is being received on the other end. Branding is tied to emotion, and it will come through in so many different ways, through the colors you use, the words you choose, the stories that you end up telling. So the experience that you want your customer to have is something that you should really think about and understand, and kind of put yourself in your customer's shoes and ask yourself, what would it be like to interact with me or my company as a customer? And then make sure that those feelings and emotions are coming through based on the experience that you give them through your branding. So for us, we decided that our company is going to be more than just about making cookies. In fact, that's just like a side thing. What we really want to do is spread happiness. So, you know, through the process, that's what we ended up deciding on as our mission. And then one of the ways that we spread happiness is by making these cookies. So find out what your mission is, what your goal is, and how what you do helps you to achieve that and helps to deliver that to your customers. So this is where, you know, you want to check your authenticity again and make sure that what you're offering and how you're delivering that is authentic. Like, for example, you don't want to be a health food place or a healthy store that's selling cigarettes and, you know, sugar-laden sodas, for example. You have to kind of stay within, you know, kind of make sure that everything that you do and everything you express is authentic, and it expresses that brand and the emotion. All of this comes together in a way that feels complete and doesn't contradict itself. So for us, when we decided, you know, we want to spread happiness, that's what we want to, when we want to share with the world, we thought about other ways that we can do that too. So for example, our customers, they're looking for the happiness that comes from being able to care for their body and also eat something that tastes really great. You know, so we want to deliver that happiness to them, but we know that people who care, like our particular target audience, that they care about their bodies and they care about more than themselves as well. So they can maybe, you know, indulge and partake in our product and eat our cookies, but not everybody can. And, you know, we know that and they know that. And so we wanted to do something even more to add to that happiness that they feel from being able to taste the great taste of our cookies, and also knowing they're doing something great for their body. But we added on the social side. So, you know, you can look into this as well, like what kind of social entrepreneurship can you get into that can help, that can align with your brand, align with your mission, and just enhance what you do in your company. So for us, we partner with charities that help deliver nutrition to those who need it most, children, and people who don't have access to healthy, whole foods. So we decided that, excuse me, that to enhance the happiness that our customers feel from enjoying our product, they feel even happier knowing that they're actually helping others as well to get nutrition. Okay, so that brings me to the last element of your story that you need to incorporate. And this is something that I really love talking about, because it has to do with a call to action is kind of making a proposition to your audience to partake in whatever it is that you have to offer. So it's quote unquote selling. And selling, for me, and I know for a lot of people, it kind of is almost like a dirty word. It seems sleazy. A lot of people get really uncomfortable when it comes to selling. So, but if you own a company, if you're whether it's a service or a product, you know, ultimately you have to sell. So how do you do that without feeling sleazy or feeling like you're putting pressure on people or you know, kind of forcing people into doing something they may not want to do? That is where, when you understand the value that goes back to the other topics that we discussed. So when you know what kind of benefit and value you're offering to your audience, you know how they feel. They feel frustrated. They're looking for something. They're out there searching for answers. And then you have the answer that they're looking for. When you look at it that way, that there are people who want what I have to offer, and I'm just providing it for them. So when you look at it like that and you really understand the value that you have to offer and that people really want it, you will feel much more inclined to make that proposition to people as opposed to selling. So you're not just going out there and just telling everybody buy my stuff, but you're going to someone, you know who they are, you understand who they are, you know where they're coming from, you know what they've gone through, and you know what they're looking for. And then you're like, hey, I have this thing. It might help. Check it out. So that makes a huge difference, just shifting your mind around how you do your call to action in general. And then when it comes in the context of a story, so, you know, you're telling your story, you know, where you came from, you're connecting with the audience emotion, you offer value proposition. And then at the end, you can't just be like, okay, see you later. That's it. I'm done. You want to also give a call to action. Sometimes people are just waiting almost for permission to take an action. So At the end of your story, just go ahead and tell them, how do they buy your product? Where do they find you? What is it like to initiate a interaction with you that would lead to you providing your services to them? So this is something that is really valuable to include in your story. Definitely do not leave it out, because people are learning about who you are, the value that you have to offer, and now they want to know how to interact with you, how to get what it is you offer. So this is something you definitely don't want to neglect from your story. So I hope, I know I kind of ran through that pretty quick, but I hope that at least the bullet points will prove valuable. I think these all, if nothing else, give you questions to ask yourself. So when you're creating your about page, or if, like I said, if you're going into any publication, whenever you're telling the story of your company and who you are and what you do, be sure to include these elements, and your story will be that much more powerful and beneficial to your business and to your customers. Thank you.
All right. So I want to go ahead and let the audience know that they can go ahead and send in questions either to Incubator at NYCMuslimCenter.org, or they can go ahead and drop them into the YouTube chat. And since we're on a bit of a delay, I'm going to go ahead and ask the first question, if that's okay. And I've seen your slide deck ahead of time, and you skipped the last slide because I was just looking at it, and you actually do it in your last slide. You tell your story in your last slide, where you just say, I guess it's your tagline, taste happiness at superfoodbakeshop.com, which is an amazing example of exactly how to do it, bringing back in the happiness element and giving the pitch to everybody. This is a call to action exactly also too, right? Come and taste it. It's an action bird. I love it. What came first, the audience or the story?
For us?
Yeah.
Definitely the story came first, actually, for us. And that's where I was talking about, your product or service might be born out of a problem, like you experienced it and you solved it, or you'd have to reverse engineer it. So for us, it definitely came first. We never imagined, doing this business, but it really came out of frustration and a need that we had. And then because we experienced so much happiness at finding the solution, that's what made us go ahead and make it into an actual business.
Awesome. So that is really cool. That's like the best way to create a business, is just something that you're doing and you love, and then it goes on to create something and makes it feel so much more natural. This part works out so well. How did you talked about telling the right story for the audience. Can you walk us through or talk us through maybe an example of where you had that, where you tried the story one way, tried it another way, how you assessed the right story, what's the right audience? How did you go through that yourselves?
Well, we looked at, how many people are searching for something healthy. And we looked, we were that audience too. So that helped. We had, tried almost everything out there. Everything kind of tasted like a granola bar or wasn't tasty enough. It was like nothing was quite hitting the spot.
Right.
And then, so I think, deciding who our audience would be, a lot of times, actually, I think that's the case for businesses, is that your audience tends to be a reflection of yourself, depending on what it is you're offering. So I think in our case, that definitely, I think we definitely aligned in that way, that we kind of know our audience, we've been there. As far as narrowing it down, of course, that came into also deciding about the product, like price point, All of those things you have to take into consideration when you think of who your target audience is or who your ideal customer is. So, we did struggle with some things along the way. Like that's one example, like, okay, because you can't cater to everyone.
Yep.
No one goes to Google, I have a problem, let me search for everything. So, it's about narrowing it down. What is your customer out there looking for? What are they typing into Google to solve this problem that they have? So I think those are some ways to kind of narrow it down. And definitely like put yourself in their shoes and imagine them now interacting with you, and does it feel right?
We have a question. How have you handled rejections or any negativity about the product and for others for their service? How do you internally handle that? How do you address that in terms of telling your story? How do you do any management of your brand? What has been your approach? What has been your experience?
That's a really, really good question. And I think lots of, individuals and companies struggle with that issue. Like, how do you deal with rejection? Personally, and what we've seen, with our product is that you have to be really, you have to know what it is you're offering. And, that's where also we were talking about the value proposition. So go back to your value proposition. If you know that what you offer is of value to people, and you've done your research and you know that there are people out there willing to pay for this solution, then you can feel really confident about what it is you offer. You have to stick with what you choose and what you decide. You don't have to always stick with it, but as you go through your process, decide on something and choose something that you can feel really, really confident about, that provides value, that is beneficial. And then, when we talked about compromising, and I've seen other brands have this problem as well. Like, sometimes people will complain about the price, for example. That's a big one that people complain about. But
everyone complains about price
exactly
all the time. Customers will always complain about the price.
They'll always complain about the price. So that's a really big one, but it's easy to be like, oh gosh, am I charging too much? What can I do to make it less? And of course, you want to offer the best price to your customers that you can. But when you know that, my product, people want my product, people need my product, and my product is worth what I'm selling it for. And the right person who values what you offer will be willing to pay for that, for example. So it's really about a mind shift, about understanding that, what you're offering does have value. And maybe one person doesn't see that, but who does see it? And if you're finding that no one does see it, then that's maybe where, number one, you have to go back to your target audience. Who am I speaking to? Am I speaking to the right people? And then number two, am I speaking to the right people? And how am I communicating to them? Is what I offer, is my value coming through with the words that I'm using? I was going to say something else. I think it really just comes down to being confident in what you offer, and then not doubting that, and not letting, you have to be prepared from the beginning that people are there's going to be naysayers, there's going to be people questioning you. And it's not just about blindly, ignoring that, but definitely be secure in who you are, what you offer, its value, and do all your homework about that so that you can feel confident.
Awesome. We have another question. This one's, they wrote it in 2 or 3 messages here, so give me 1 second.
Okay.
They are experiencing a situation, or they're asking about a situation, maybe they're not experiencing it, where the stories in the space they are trying to operate are, as they say, they're claiming they're more interesting, and that there's a certain trend in the industry that your story doesn't exactly fit, that tends to get reported on. How do you make yourself more appealing for publication purposes, getting your pitches to food writers, magazines, etc.? Make yourself more interesting.
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think it would really go back to the emotion. And I think, a lot of the points actually that we mentioned, I think can help solve that if you just be really clear about what it is that you're expressing. So for example, the benefit, the value, again, when you're expressing that my company or my product or my service offers this benefit, and then you use emotion to connect with your audience, I think that is what makes you more interesting. So it's not necessarily, I would say, like, be careful about getting online and getting, kind of dizzied by all of the trends and the noise that's out there, and just really hone in on who it is you're talking to and speak directly to them. Like, imagine the difference between, walking into a party with like dozens of people there, or having like a really deep conversation with someone close to you, like over coffee. You want your company to speak to your audience like you would that close person that you would speak to over coffee. Like, really get to know who they are so that you can understand them and reach them on a deeper level. So it's not about being more interesting, being more flashy necessarily, but it's really about telling your audience, knowing that, okay, these people get me, this company gets me, this product really resonates with me. So I think figuring that out for yourself is more important than comparing yourself to others in that sense. But when you do compare, I would say just stick to the part that we talked about, which is how can you differentiate what you're offering from the other companies out there? What is special about what you do? And also your promise. So that can also help you stand out.
I think that's a really great answer. It seems like, part of what I heard there was, if I feel like, and this is why I said they feel like they're telling a less interesting story in the space. And I seriously doubt that, but I think what you might be doing is misidentifying what your space is. If you're telling a less interesting story, then you're talking to the wrong audience. And that's, I think, part of where you're getting at with that. And I also think identifying your audience, as you were talking about, Sister Danielle, might help to allow you to tell that compelling story also to your publications and the writers, so that they can understand, oh yeah, I do have an audience for this story. I do have an audience for this product, if I can just understand that. Do you have what are your experiences working with publications and writers, people reporting on you? What has that been like for you guys?
First, I just want to add one more thing to that last question. Yeah, because I just wanted to say that, when you tell your company story or your brand story, it doesn't necessarily have to be your personal story. Like, you might not have lived through something that's, so spectacular and amazing that you need to tell everybody about, and that's okay. But you can definitely create a story using these elements. And I think understanding your audience, like you emphasized, really could help you create a story. It's not necessarily like, okay, and then I did this and this is my life, but it's the story about what you offer. That's really important. So I'm sorry, what was the question about?
So they brought up, and I don't know if this, what your level of experience with this is, the interactions that they're seeking to have pictures with food writers, magazines. What are your experience working with these other, I guess, media sources that might want to report on, or how do you amplify your business through such sources? But basically, what's your marketing plan? How have you done your storytelling in different formats?
Okay, well, we have it, for example, on our website with our About page. So we just wanted to keep that concise, thinking that, people don't do a lot of reading. They don't want to know all the details. They just want to know, how can this help me? What can I get from this? So we try to, keep that concise. With interviews, we just try to bring out the elements of what it is that we do that we think would benefit, that audience the most. And it's hard because if you're being interviewed, it's, easy to try to kind of ramble on and just tell all the details, but you actually have to try to think of it in the same way and be concise and to the point. So that's why like these slides, each point, if you just remember those elements and you make sure that you highlight them and bring them out whenever you're talking to, maybe someone interviewing you, or you're writing a blog, or whatever, to help to simplify it and keep it concise and to the point.
Great. We have another question on YouTube. If you know your target, but don't know where to find them and talk to them, what should you do?
So if you know who your target audience is and you don't know how to find them, I feel like that would be pretty hard nowadays, because on the internet, it depends, I guess, on what you're doing. If you're trying to be local, you can still try to target locally. So you can look at, your target customer, your ideal customer. What are their interests? Where do they go? Where do they eat? Where do they shop? Where do they hang out? So think about who your target customer is, and then imagine, like, what does this person do? What do they do when they wake up in the morning? How do they live out their day? What kind of work do they do? Do they spend time outdoors? Do they go shopping at the mall? Like, they hang out in coffee shops, or they like, some kind of ethnic cuisines? Or so knowing who your ideal customer is will help you find out what their interests are. And then when you know what their interests are, you can find your customers, because you can use other things that already exist. Like, they may not know about you, but they know about something else that your ideal customers will have in common. And then so you can go there to seek them out. And obviously in the online world now, it's much easier. So our business is online, so that changes things, I guess. But I think even if you're like a brick and mortar company, even just like literally local other businesses and other locations in your area, when you know who your ideal customer is, you find out, okay, where are they frequenting in my neighborhood, in my area, and just actually go and find them.
Excellent. So I had a question. I wrote a bunch of questions, so I keep looking down.
Okay.
And I had a similar question that I want to just maybe pull the string a little bit more on. Were there any tools or methods that you used that sort of sounded like maybe there was in identifying your target and understanding your target audience, for those who might be struggling to understand who their target audience is, or as the previous questioner said, how to reach them? Is there any resources you have or a method that maybe you used?
Well, I think the method is questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's lots of like specific questions you can find out there on like how to determine your ideal client or your ideal customer. But I think just ask basic questions about a human. Like, this is a real person. So imagine if there was someone that you were really interested in and you wanted to know about them, and you sat down with them, you would ask them all kinds of questions. You would want to know like what they care about. You would want to know what they dream about, what they think about, what they hope for, what things do they love, what things do they hate. So I think just really asking a lot of questions. You know what you're offering, and you have an idea of somebody who might be interested in that. So now that's when you start just, you're going to be the one at first to answer those questions. You don't have a person sitting in front of you, but from there you take that, and then you can start doing market research and actually going out to people who fit that description and actually talking to them and asking questions, and getting answers, and really just listening. So like, if you're going to be doing that kind of market research, you really want to have feedback from those people, and that will help you determine if that is in fact your ideal customer. Because maybe what they want, what they need doesn't align with what you offer. And then you have to go back and you have to recalibrate based on that information. You can also do lots of research on the internet, market research. What is the size of this market, and like what portion of it do I think I can get, and who are those people that are in this market, that are buying these things, or whatever it is. So it's a lot of research. First you're going to work with yourself to determine those qualities in your ideal customer, your target audience. and then it's going to be research, and you got to put in the work. You got to make phone calls. You got to, get in touch with people, for us, it was like, letting people try our product and bringing it with us wherever we went, asking people for feedback, making adjustments, and then, deciding, like, some people who don't like certain aspects, or they want something a little bit different. Is that really our target client, or do we need to pivot a little bit? So you'll learn a lot, and you'll have to change as you go, but you definitely just have to put in the footwork, and it'll definitely become clear through that, I would say.
We have another question. How can you scale up a business if your budget for ads is still too small?
Okay, so since we're talking about stories, and the reason that this is actually such an important topic, I can't really go into what to do with your, the money you have to spend on ads, but I'll just say that, creating a really powerful story can be really powerful. So if you're able to get that story out to people, there's so many ways to do that. I think just be creative and find other ways to share your story. And if it really does resonate with your audience, then to some extent, like it will gain traction on its own as well. So I think, on the one hand, yes, you need to get in front of a lot of eyes or ears to be able to find your customers. But at the same time, if you're just starting out and you have limited resources, I think really honing in and creating a powerful brand and a powerful story around that brand will really help you to go as far as you can with what you have.
Yep. All right. Of course, being an internet-based company, you guys, I imagine, are advertising a lot online. Do you have other experience with other methods of reaching out to your audience, or did you use mostly Google Analytics? What has been your experience as an online company?
Well, we've done, a lot of reaching out directly, actually, to individuals, phone calls, emails, and, just really trying to create that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then, especially
what kind of individuals would you reach out to? Individuals for customers, or?
Well, potential customers. So
Sure.
Really just like a grassroots type of method where, like, we first went to, our family and then our friends. And then as that started to grow, and part of what helped with that actually is like maintaining that brand emotion of happiness. So we have our customers, we follow up with their packages, for example, make sure that they arrived. With one customer, her package didn't arrive. She had issues with USPS. So we followed up, we solved the problem, and she was so happy and so amazed that we had paid so much attention to her order that she ended up spreading the message herself. And she started, sharing, like, oh, I bought this product from this company, and then they cared so much about me that they checked up on me, they followed up with me, they made sure my packages arrived, they sent it through a different carrier for me, So creating your the brand emotion can lead to, word of mouth, and, every company is different. So for us, we want to grow like in a very measured pace, because we're a product-based thing. So we have to make sure we have, we're limited in terms of how much we can produce and inventory and all that. So our method, like for us, this works well, which is just making sure we deliver on our promise to our customers, and then maintain that relationship with them and try to really make sure that they actually are happy in the end, with what they've received and how we've interacted with them. And we see that leading to growth.
Awesome. I do think that the story of following up with her as part of your storytelling is actually what really distinguishes this from a topic on sales or a topic on marketing. This is not just those things, but this is sort of, from what you said, sounds like not just what you're telling others, but what also you're telling yourselves as you're going through it. And then it made a difference for that customer. So that's amazing.
Exactly. Thank you.
Hoping we get a few questions with the few minutes we have left on YouTube, but in the meantime, I will just keep going, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
We got like 5 minutes left.
Mm-hmm.
How did you assess whether the stories you were telling were working?
I think we just have to keep revisiting it, and changing it. Always be willing to be flexible and make changes. So, nothing's set in stone. I think just constantly revisiting these ideas, these topics, and then double checking, like, is this actually coming through? And then interacting with customers, interacting with family and friends. Hey, can you check this out? What do you get when you read this? Or what do you feel when you see this? And definitely looking for feedback, I think is so important, and being open to criticism and letting people know that, like, I actually want to know what you think. Don't just encourage me and tell me what I want to hear. And then being willing to hear constructive criticism or otherwise. You know what it is you're trying to do. You know where you want to go. You know what your vision and mission are. And so if not everybody gets it, that's okay. Or if you're not doing it right, or you're not doing it as best you can, that's also okay. You can still improve, you can change. And I think that's actually critical for any companies to continue to grow and change and be flexible as time goes on, and to really listen to that feedback, because you're not talking out into a void. And if you think you are, or you think that's going to be okay, it's really going to limit what you're able to do.
All right. Let's see if I have one more to give you.
Okay.
And we'll wrap it up. Your promise, did you know the promise going in? Did you develop it over time, interacting with people in the story? Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the promise, it wasn't from the very beginning. So in the beginning, it was like, oh, we have a product made of food, we're eating food. It's got very little added sugar. It tastes amazing. And then we started noticing that, most of our recipes would come out with 2 grams of added sugar or less. So we have from 0 up to 2. And then as we, messed with new recipes and stuff, some of them would start, like maybe one of them came out like 3 grams of sugar. And then it was kind of like, oh, do we want to do that? Do we want to put that out there? And we just kind of made that decision that 2 is the limit. Because that keeps your added sugar very low. Like if you're on like a very low sugar diet, you want to keep your sugar under like 25 grams per day. So, eating a snack that has 2 grams added sugar makes it easier to stay within that range for sure. And we didn't want to increase it any more than that. So that was something that we came up with through, product development. And, as we went through these questions ourselves and answered them for ourselves, we figured that's something that we can definitely do. And, not having, one of the distinctions of our product is that it doesn't have any processed flours or, it has whole food ingredients. And we actually take the seeds out of the dates ourselves to that level. So we were like, okay, this is something that we think makes our product special. We're not using fillers. We're not trying to reduce the price by filling it up with flour. This is something that we want to stick to, and we believe that our customers value. So we definitely, it took time, and it was part of the process of choosing that promise.
Awesome. I'll let everybody know that I've tried them. They're really delicious. So if you're interested, by all means, check out their site and give them a try yourself. I thank you, Sister Danielle, for this evening. I want to let everybody know that, again, we're going to have the full schedule out very soon. But for next week, we are going to have, again, Thursday night, 8 p.m. We're having attorney Siraj Sahel, who will be addressing topic we titled Make It Right. And he's going to talk about elements of your business plan, business incorporation, and intellectual property protections. So please look in your email for that invite. Make sure, again, to add Incubator at nycmuslimcenter.org to your contacts list so we don't get filtered out. And we look forward to seeing you then. Until then, Assalamu alaikum. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you.